Good morning, Heaven Bound family, and all that might be listening. This is Pastor Larry with a moment in the Word on this Thursday, the 4th of March. And we are continuing in the 16th chapter of the book of Revelations. You remember in the 15th chapter, we were introduced to 7 angels who have 7 vials or bowls filled with the wrath of God, which is about to be poured out upon the earth. Read just a little bit to you before I do. Yesterday we talked about the first 4 vials that was poured out. You remember the first vial was poured out in boils, infectious, grievous sores came upon all the people of the earth there, and this is a following up of the 6th plague there in Egypt in Exodus chapter 9 and verses 8 through 12 there. You remember when Moses was pouring out his 10 plagues upon the Egyptians there. The 6th one was boils there. And since it was a literal event, historical event that happened then, there's no reason to believe it won't be literal here. The second one is the sea became blood. You remember back earlier, a third of the sea became blood, and all the fishes died, and all the ships were destroyed. But now then, it's all of the sea becomes blood. And it says, as a dead man's blood there. And then in the third one, we have the blood of the rivers there. This would be the rivers, the streams, the drinking water, if you will. The people will be compelled to drink blood. And this is, again, literal. We can see it as literally happened because of the fact that it happened back in Egypt. In the first plague that Moses brought against the Egyptians, he struck the Nile River there, and it became blood. And in Exodus chapter 7, in verses 19 and 21. The 4th seal we covered yesterday was the great heat. I mentioned, I think David Jeremiah said that if you've ever experienced an extremely bad sunburn, then multiply that several times. And this is what's going to happen. The people are going to be scorched with the great heat of the poured out upon the people with the 4th vial there. And then today we will pick up and try to get through the 5th, 6th, and 7th vials, and that's where we're at in today's lesson. So let's read in Revelation chapter 16, verse 10. It says, "And the 5th angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain, and blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pain and their sores, and repented not of their deeds." A couple of things here that is, again, we can see it, number one, as literal. It happened in Exodus chapter 10, verse 21, 23. If you were to turn over to the book of Joel, we won't take time to do that, but in Joel chapter 2, verse 1 and 2, Joel says that there's going to be a day of darkness and gloominess that's going to come upon the earth there. In Egypt, the darkness was so great that for the 3 days the people didn't even move because they couldn't see their hand in front of their face, so to speak. Jesus speaks in Mark chapter 13, verse 21, of the day when the sun and the moon is going to refuse to shine, and there's going to be darkness. Second thing that we might look at here in this 5th seal is the fact that punishment won't cause people to repent. We find nothing in Luke chapter 16 of the rich man repenting. There was a crying out for a drop of water to cool his tongue. But nowhere do we hear him say, I'm sorry, I wished I hadn't treated Lazarus so bad, or etc. To the contrary, here they curse God because of the boils and because of the blood and because of the darkness. When we look at the seventh, by the way, before we leave the sixth seal, let's go to the sixth seal. It says, and the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the waters thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the earth might be prepared. And he goes on to say, and I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. In other words, it's not going to be frogs, but it will be a frog-like spirit, demons, that is going to be broadcasted by the Antichrist, by the false prophet, and by the beast here, the Antichrist here. They're going to send out a call, if you will, to all the kings of the earth. And these demons that go forth are going to be able to perform miracles, and they'll convince the kings of the earth that they're to come down against Jerusalem and destroy this Christ kingdom that is forecasted, that is going to be set up, and that Christ is going to reign, and there will be righteousness. Their wickedness will have to cease. And so these demons convince the kings of the earth, and in order that they all might come down, we'll have the from Africa coming from the west, going towards the east, the nations of China and the southern Asia will come from the east, come west to, and they will cross the river Euphrates there. And again, some critics talked about how wide, how deep the Euphrates River is, how impossible it would be for it to dry up. But keep in mind, literally, historically, God dried up the Red Sea for the children of Israel to escape out of Egypt, dried up the Jordan River for the children of Israel to enter into the Canaan land. And when you consider Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and the river Euphrates was just a tiny part in comparison to the whole of the earth that God created. And but all the nations are coming down against, and we read back in earlier that the army that's coming from the east will be equal to 200 million soldiers is going to come down just from the east, not counting all of those who will come from the west, and will gather around Jerusalem or meet there at Jerusalem for the purpose of destroying Christ's kingdom. Okay, we come to the seventh seal, and it says, and the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, it is done. And there were voices and thundering and lightning, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. And the great city, meaning Jerusalem, was divided into three parts. And the cities of the nations, this would be the cities like London and Paris and Rome and various other great cities. It says, and the great city was divided, speaking about Jerusalem, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. And so during this seventh vow there, this God is going to, not only is there going to be a great earthquake there that's going to divide the city of Jerusalem, that's going to destroy the major cities of the earth there, but there's going to be hail coming down upon the people, and the hail is the size of a talent, which would equal 100 pounds in our measure. Imagine 100-pound hail hitting a person, and of course, how quickly thousands could be killed by the hail there as they gather around Jerusalem. And it's interesting as the hail falls, as the people begin to be destroyed by the hail and so forth, a voice out of the temple is going to cry, "It is done." It doesn't tell us whose voice it is. Perhaps it was Christ's. Remember, Christ cried out from the cross just before expiring, "It is finished," meaning that the work, the redemptive work of Christ, necessary to cover man's sin so that God might maintain his holiness and his justice. Christ said, "It is finished." Well, here he says, "It is done." Keep in mind that the seventh plague will continue until Christ comes with all of his holy angels. And Christ stands, according to Zechariah chapter 14, verse 4. He will stand with his feet upon Mount Zion there. And because of the earthquake, remember the mountain is going to be split open. The landscape is going to completely be changed because of the great earthquake. And trying to think of his name right now, Larkin. He makes a statement here that's interesting, and let me read it to you and we'll close. But he said, "It is worthy of note that at the breaking up of the seventh seal," remember back in the very beginning, chapter 6 there, in chapter 5, Jesus takes a seven seal book, and in chapter 6, he begins to open it with the four horsemen of the apocalypse, with the souls under the altar there, with 144,000 being sealed and so forth. He said, "It is worthy of note that at the breaking of the seventh seal, and the sounding of the seventh trumpet, and the pouring out of the seventh vial, that the same thing occurred. That is, voices and thundering are heard, great lightning is seen, and there is a great earthquake. And at the sounding of the seventh trumpet and the pouring out of the seventh vial, there is a great hailstorm." This only confirms what has been already stated, that the seventh seal includes the seven trumpets, and seven trumpets includes the seven vials, and that he says here, the seventh seal and the seventh trumpet and the seventh vial all refer to the same period, the end of the week. In other words, the opening of the seventh seal reveals the events that are about to happen. The blast of the seventh trumpet announces the events as forthgoing, and the outpouring of the seventh vial executes that which the seals and the trumpets has proclaimed. This brings us down to chapter 17. We'll pick it up tomorrow. But you can see there's going to be nothing but absolute devastation, suffering from the boil, suffering from the heat, suffering from the blood they're having to drink, suffering from the hailstorms, and so forth. You don't want to be here when the seven vials are poured out. My friend, praise God, we won't have to, as Christians, we won't have to be here, for we were taken out back in chapter 4. This is Pastor Larry with a moment in the Word. Go forth today, be blessed, bless someone, it'll bless God. God will then bless you.